Hello and welcome to a cover story conversation with Suhail Seth, ad man, image maker, columnist, commentator. But today, Suhail, I'm going to be talking to you about another role of yours. We are, as you know, Air India has now gone back to the Tata stables. It's going to be taken over in January. So, a little bit about what we're expecting on the airline sector, what we are going to be expecting from the Tatas particularly, and where we stand on tourism and travel in a COVID continuous world. Because you're someone I've seen on your Twitter, you're in and out with various flights. Why I'm talking to Swale, of course, is he's been associated with closely with the Ratan Tata. He's been an advisor, friend for I think ever since the 90s. He's also been on the advisory board of British Airways. So this is someone who has an inside view and a perspective that I think we'd all like to hear about. So welcome to this conversation, Suhail Seth.
Thank you.
And right off, we're starting off. What can we expect from Air India under the Tatas? We saw the Ghar Vapsi tweet, welcome back home. But beyond that, what are these plans? Is he going to merge all the airlines into one? Is he going to make it a low-cost carrier? What's going to happen?
See, there are two or three things, and I'm glad you've identified it, and thank you for having me on Cover Story. Air India, for all said and done, was the ultimate brand in the airline business until the 70s. It was the first airline in the world that ordered jet engines. People who flew Air India swore by it. You had people of the eminence of Salvador Dali, the Beatles, Mick Jagger, who loved it. In fact, Salvador Dali couldn't pay the airfare, so he drew and painted on ashtrays. There were about 500 ashtrays lying in an Air India collection. You had people, painters. So it was the world's most glamorous airline because it was run meticulously by people like J.R.D. Tata and by people like Bobby Cooker. These were people who were involved in the day-to-day running. There was a very interesting thing called the Blue Notes. So whenever J.R.D. traveled on Air India, he made meticulous notes in blue ink, and those blue notes would be sent directly to the respective departments. That was the attention to detail. We then became a government airline. Democracies don't work for airlines. We became off by and for the people, but run by bureaucrats who neither had any interest nor any training, but most importantly, Priya, they had no accountability. Airlines are a business that require attention, that require detailing, and that require response. An airline can't be silent when a Priya Sahgal is trying to board the flight and she finds that, after she boards, there are cockroaches or there are other inconveniences on the plane with no one to redress them. So obviously the coming home of Air India is important. It's important from three perspectives. Number one, for the employees. The employees also felt rudderless. When you work in a government department versus working in the private sector, the difference is apparent. In the government sector, everything is taken for granted. In the private sector, you perform or you perish. These are people. So I've always believed that Air India has some of the finest pilots in the world, some of the finest engineering staff in the world. So I believe that it's very good for the employees. It's very good.
There is a fear of retrenchment, Suhail.
Of course there will be. I'm sure there will be retrenchment, but as per the contract, not for the first 1 year, not for the first 12 months. But you see, the point is, people say retrenchment, knowing, Mr. Ratan Tata and knowing Chandra, who's the chairman of Tata Sons, knowing their compassion, their empathy, I think it'll be reskilling, it'll be redeployment, but it'll not be retrenchment. That's my belief. But we'll wait for things to happen. The third, which is very important, is it's a great invigorator for brand India and Indians all over the world. Please remember, some of the slots that Air India today has are much treasured slots in terms of landing slots. You've also got to understand, and I said this on the day this happened, I said, while the Tatas will own Air India will belong to every Indian. The ownership and the association and the emotional connect was visible when I call it the transfer happened. You saw on Twitter, you saw in social media, people are reliving their better memories of Air India. People were coming back and telling a Priya, saying, remember, we flew this particular sector to Toronto in 1971, and this is what happened. People then started reliving the era of what I call stewardesses, who were icons of beauty, not only beauty, but beauty and brains in their own time. That resurgence in a brand is very good for a brand. See, brands are built on two things: benefits and what I call their emotional value or their emotional connect. Air India has a tremendous emotional connect, not only with every Indian here, but with every Indian outside. In the good old days, we used to laugh and make uncharitable comments about the age of stewardesses. But then we would also say that on flights, they would look after you as your family would. There was an affection. They would speak a language that you and I spoke. If they were picking up a Sardarji couple from Birmingham and bringing them to India, and those people didn't speak the Queen's English, these stewardesses, flight attendants would make an effort to speak in Punjabi. This was the Air India of India. And I think that will come back. Plus, you've got to understand the excellence and the experience that the Tatas have. Tatas have run a hospitality business since 1908 in the form of the Taj. They understand consumers. What do you want on a flight? You want attendance from the attendant, you want on-time management, and you want great hospitality. All three the Tatas are known for. Now, if a Priya books a ticket, she will book the ticket 90% digitally. Tata's own TCS. So, if you look at the synergy is all there in terms of Air India and Tatas.
But what happens if you, all this was, the era of luxury when Air India was, identified with the Maharaja. Now, of course, we are in the age of low cost carriers where, costs are cutting down. Is he going to make it into an Air Asia kind of a situation, or will he carry on with the luxury brand?
Not at all. I'll tell you why. If you look at the airline scape today and you see the two airlines that are really, really doing well, and one of which is phenomenally well, is Emirates. If you look at the Emirates business model post-COVID, and they have accentuated it, they are now running A380s from Dubai to almost 6 sectors, which include the Americas, it includes Europe. Now, those A380s have a first class of which is almost about 32 seats. The average cost is about 6 lakhs of 32 seats. Now, Priya, you do the math. If you do luxury and if you're able to sell your first in business, you never make money on economy. Remember that. On economy, no airline makes. The airlines in India make it because these are short haul flights. So if you look at your fuel, you look at your laden weight, and plus you add the extras, they start making money. But otherwise, airlines a lot of the time make money on business and first. Look at what Qatar has done. It's become a completely all business airline. So it's only got economy and business. Now, exactly taking a point about luxury. Earlier, Emirates had economy, business, and first. Why have they introduced premium economy? Because they're continuing to add bells and whistles in what I call the luxury bucket. The moment you add bells and whistles in the luxury bucket, they become A, intangible, B, immeasurable. So the consumer is happy to pay, but he can't compartmentalize. On an economy fare, you can compare economy to economy because you're just being ferried from one point to the other. So how different will the economy be from one airline to the other? But I can actually create magnificent differences in business and first. So I think Air India will adopt, to my mind, a 3-tier class, as it should. Number two, to think that everything will happen very quickly is also erroneous. It'll take a long time for the airline to, what I call, stabilize and settle in. And yes, there has to be product rehauling, product improvement, and product redesign, because the aircraft are in bad shape. The liveried aircrafts are even worse shape. So we'll have to wait and see.
In terms of market share, are you, there is also a concern about right now Indigo rules the roost literally with over 55 to 58%. Then I think comes Air India with 12%, after which is Spice. And Air Vistara and Air Asia are, I don't know the exact figures, but right now there is a 50% monopoly by Indigo plus.
That's perfect. The problem will be that Indigo's international sectors do not even match up to those of Air India. So Air India's international sectors and its volume capabilities are much higher. Now, let's imagine a Priya Sahgal boards this plane in Toronto and she's flying Toronto, Delhi, Delhi, Jalandhar. The chances are that she will do the entire thing on one airline for two reasons. Number one, for the carry through. You won't have to wait for your luggage in Delhi or, blah, blah, blah. Number two, and this is an important point, all your fares are indexed to the amount of usage on that airline. A lot of people were making a mistake on Twitter, and I didn't want to correct them at that time. People were saying, oh, suddenly first class fares one way have gone up. But one way fares are always higher than return fares. For people who are in the travel business, they know it. So, multi-city fares, if you're on the same airline, are lower than multi-city fares on two separate airlines. So imagine if I was doing Air India and then domestic Indigo, my fare structure would be very high. So I see great advantages in the following. I see great advantages in carry through. I see great advantages in market segmentation. I also see great advantages in the catchment areas. Please understand, because the Tatas run the Taj hotels, our database is phenomenal. And our database spans the world because we have guests coming in and we have guests going out. Take, for example, the Chambers, which is the business club at the Taj. If you combine all the membership of the Chambers, that alone will be about 20,000 or maybe 10, 15,000. Those are your upper crust. How easy is it for me to market? How easy is it for me to bundle? So in many ways, we are creating, to my mind, a seamless proposition. Now, the Taj has opened hotels in centers that you and I can't imagine, whether it's Katra, whether it is Tirupati, whether it is Vizag, blah, blah, blah. It's also in the hills. Now, if people want a seamlessness, they will fly on Air India. And if I'm able to bundle that hotel offer for people, let's say, who are going on a pilgrimage to Mata Vaishno Devi, look at the logical and logistical advantage that I as a customer have if I follow one airline or one group. On top of this, and this is very important, N. Chandrasekaran, who ran TCS brilliantly and is now the chairman of Tata Sons, understands this better. So the One Tata, the super app, when it happens, it'll be unreal. Because a Priya can walk into the Taj, have a Kona coffee at Mansingh, walk out, collect her points, go to Titan, buy a watch, collect some points, and then redeem them for her airline ticket. You tell me which other airline in the world will be able to offer what I call such a bundled consumer proposition. I don't think there's any, because I've done my math. British Airways, see, almost all airlines tie up with hotels. Like Indigo has tied up with Accor, because Rahul Bhatia is also the Accor franchisee. But that's in India. You look at the advantages that the Tatas will have in terms of all their consumer businesses, including the aviation business.
Before we go for a break, let me give you one point maybe which you can take across to Ratan Tata from the economy point of view, which is a lot of my friends and all of us, we prefer flying Air India rather than any of the other airlines is because they have a larger baggage allowance. So please ask him not to take that point away.
Excellent.
Sohail, it's been a long journey for Ratan Tata, Tata Singapore Airlines. I remember, I think in 96 that they first tried during CM Ibrahim's time, and they were thwarted by Jet Airways, ironically.
Correct.
A little bit about that for our viewers.
You have to understand, and it's very poignant, Priya, that you're having this program on December 28, 2021, which is a couple of days or a week from now. Ratan Tata turns 84. It's been a marvelous legacy. It's been a legacy of compassion. It's been a legacy of commercial excellence. But most importantly, it's been a legacy of empathy. Let me give you the most recent example. You heard what he did when 26/11 happened. He attended every funeral, no matter whether the person was a Taj employee or not, whether guest, blah, blah, blah. Ratan Tata, having seen him over the years and almost 3 decades now, brings to business a rare visionary feat. That feat combines minute attention to detail. I've seen him look at the stitching on the seats of a Range Rover. Now, that kind of excellence, that kind of zeal, that kind of commitment, I've rarely seen in the world, other than Vicky Oberoi, but that's limited to hotels. In the case of Mr. Tata, it's been seen right through. 1996, the first lobbies began working against Tata's getting into aviation. What did Ratan Tata do? You think he didn't have the clout? Of course he had the clout. The Tatas could have muscled their way. They could have created a lobby group. But Ratan Tata said, he says, that's not who I am. That's not who the group is. The House of Tata will wait its turn. And we waited from 1996 to 2020. That's a long time. You're talking about 24 years of just, waiting for something to happen, which, by the way, was taken away from the House of Tata. It wasn't as if, the Tatas surrendered Air India. Air India was taken away from the House of Tata because it needed to serve some narrow-minded needs of a couple of bureaucrats or politicians. So today, for Mr. Tata, it's not a vindication. People have to understand the man. When the Cyrus Mystery case was decided in favor of the Tatas, in his mind, it wasn't a celebration. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt the truth had played its part. Now, you've got to actually understand that man's thinking. A lot of people say, was Ratan Tata celebrating? No, you saw his tweet that day when the judgment came. His tweet was simple-minded. It said, we're delighted with this judgment. The truth has prevailed. For a man who left Singur, and we famously said, he says, I'm the kind of person, you put a gun to my head. Either you fire or you move the gun. I'm not moving. So that legacy, as you rightly said, is going to come very handy. And to my mind, in the selection of N. Chandrasekaran, which happened in January 2017, because October 24, 2016, Cyrus Mistry was asked to step down as chairman. He chose to leave totally. In 2017, January, when Chandra was made the offer and he became chairman in February of Tata Sons, I think Mr. Tata has found a person who A, understands the Tata ethos, B, who has performed admirably, C, who also understands that everything in the House of Tata is not about business. It's about belief. It's not about commerce. It's about compassion as well.
What is the equation between between Ratan Tata, the Wadias, and the Palanji Mysteries? They also go back a long way. Also, there's been time when Nasli Wadia introduced Ratan Tata to Vajpayee. There's been also quid pro quo, and now here they're competing on the airline business.
Well, see, there was no competition. The point is that by that logic, we shouldn't have even gotten to the real estate business in the House of Tata, because Nasli Wadia had sold the mill lands and he was in the real estate business. I think the whole Nasli Wadia Palanji Mystery saga has been captured in a myriad ways, including in a book recently by Kumi Kapoor, where Kumi believes that Nasli felt slighted, blah, blah, blah. I know what Mr. Tata has been through. I know how he treats human beings. I know how he treats people. I've said this before on NewsX in an interview with one of your colleagues, and I will say this again. He was being given the Rockefeller Lifetime Achievement Award at Buckingham Palace, and he refused to attend because 2 of his dogs fell ill. That's the man. And when I mentioned this to Prince Charles, his only reply was, he says, he's a true gentleman and a true human being. I said, you've arranged everything. It was the day before. I said, I'm sorry, you can't make it. So you've got to understand where Ratan Tata comes from. Today, if you do a poll, and I'm not saying this because he's a friend and because, I know him intimately, but you do a poll in India, there'll be very few people who will take pot shots at Ratan Tata. Why? We have continued to hold the legacy of the trusts. The businesses are done in a way that is above board. And I'm delighted that Chandra is also following the same path, which, by the way, for whatever reason, his predecessor was or wasn't, but I think he wasn't. Chandra, to my mind, is following a path of what I call the Tata culture, the Tata ethos, the Tata value architecture. And that's important. So I think for Ratan Tata at 84, what pre-birthday gift would have been better than getting Air India? And then see again here, look at the decency of Mr. Tata. When asked by Economic Times and other newspapers, he says, I had no role to play. It was N. Chandrasekaran and his team who made sure that our bid was approved, that the bid got sanctioned and the airline came. He could have easily taken the credit. But that's not who he is. Which is why when it comes to Air India will make sure the consumers get the credit for the fact that they believe in Air India.
Watch this space, but yes, there is a tremendous amount of goodwill and nostalgia, as you said, for the brand that we're hoping will come back. And just a little bit, Suhail, to take you away from Tata's on the travel industry, what is happening now? You've been traveling a lot, especially with this new variant coming in. Where do you see the industry headed?
It's very bad, Priya. It's going to hamper three things. Number one, your aviation business is going to be even further crippled. Many airlines will go in for Chapter 11. There is no question. The airline business has been bleeding for the last 3 years, sometimes owing to jet fuel pricing, sometimes because of these lockdowns, sometimes because of travel restrictions. Number two, as you rightly said, the Omicron multiplier amplification effect is so huge that people are now not willing to take risks. In London, 92% cancellation of all Christmas parties, of all Christmas related travel, which means pubs, restaurants, hotels, civil aviation things, airport operators, all are suffering. So the airlines are bleeding, the hotels are bleeding, but here's the silver lining, and which is again interesting. Not to use the Taj example, they started something called Ama, which were these standalone bungalows refurbished for entire families to stay. In COVID times, they were the biggest hit. So also what is happening is domestic tourism in India has surged. Today, you can't get a room in Rajasthan for love or money. In certain categories of 5 stars, the average room rate is 40,000 rupees. So our resorts are doing very well. Urban city hotels are suffering, as they will continue to suffer. You had a lot in the winter season of international travelers coming in. That is going to stop. I don't see any recovery in this sector until 2023, max 2024. Because just for it to recover will take a long time. And please understand, airlines, unlike Vistara or let's say the other Indian carriers, including Indigo, they haven't gone in for mass retrenchment. See what the foreign airlines have done. Wherever there has been sector curtailment, the staff has been laid off, including, foreign airline staff in India. So you're seeing a bloodbath of the kind you've never seen before. Plus, also, please remember, tourism is the largest generator of employment of both skilled and non-skilled. That sector is bleeding today. You can imagine what it's doing to employment.
Question, people are now opting more for road trips rather than,
Absolutely. In fact, I was the one who also helped. And I mean, in the sense I think a lot of people now want the hotel to send a car to your home, fully sanitized. You get into the car, you go to your hotel, you enjoy your holiday, come back in their car, fully sanitized to your house. So this door to door, which is like, dream, discover, delight, all these issues are now being done with by hotels. And you're right, people are choosing road trips. People are choosing people they want to be with. So safety is not in numbers alone. Safety is also in who you know. Because who you don't know if that person can or may be a super spreader.
And in terms of destinations, Christmas, New Year's as we speak, it's around the corner. So where do you think people are headed? Is Goa your favorite destination? Where are you for Christmas?
We have a house in Goa, and I'm worried that Goa will be infested.
Everybody from Delhi is headed to Goa, I must tell you.
But the sad part is that I don't think the Goa infrastructure is capable of handling such a thing. A. B. What the Delhi Disaster Management Act under the DDMA, if you notice, they have announced several curtailments. The Delhi Golf Club, for instance, has cancelled its Xmas Eve and its New Year parties, in keeping in line with the controls. I think the Goa government should immediately clamp down, because there will be hell to pay. You see, you cannot have crowds of more than 10, 15, 20 people. No one realizes. I left London just on the day this Omicron thing started happening. Today, it has gone insane. You're seeing almost 100,000 cases, new cases every day of Omicron in the UK. And that's with a 90% vaccinated population. we're a 34% initial dose vaccinated population. So we seriously need to worry. The government needs not only to give booster shots to every Indian who's eligible, but we also need, through the booster shots, to boost tourism, because that's suffering.
Because travel bans don't help. We saw that with the Delta variant. They
never help.
Yeah.
Travel bans don't help, but travel regulations do. But again, we've got to be realistic. You can't tell me that if you're taking off from London, please do an RT-PCR within 72 hours, land, do an RT-PCR, and then stay in self-isolation. There has to be a mechanism. Now, you know what the UK has done is they've got self-administered lateral flow tests. So suppose I'm sitting at home and I suddenly start getting some symptoms and I'm worried. I can do my own lateral flow test, which is actually valid. But then, in our country, there are people who are circumventing the law. Someone will, produce fake certificates, all of that. But I think two things need to happen. We need to mask up. And the tragedy, Priya, is the more educated you are, the more entitled you feel, and therefore you unmask, which to my mind is reprehensible. I've seen in all my travels, it is only in the India sector that people will not wear a mask. And then if you ask them politely, they'll say, I've been vaccinated and who are you? And even the airline staff is not willing to, push the needle.
And how are Indian vaccinations treated abroad? I know they're accepted technically, but anecdotally,
they're fine. I mean, no one asks you. No one. We still don't have the kind of vaccine racism that we imagined. And I hope things will improve. So I don't think that's a worry.
On that note, Suhail said, very pleasure talking to you. And we've had a very unusual, interesting topic, but something that I think everybody is going to be watching around in January when Air India goes back to where it belongs. So thank you for those insights so much. And for this conversation.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.